Don't forget to pay attention to all of the extra musical things while you're performing, in addition to all the good notes and rhythms and sound quality and all that stuff that we usually talk about. Most teachers, myself included, tend to focus on like the really important things like playing the clarinet well, playing the music well, thinking about the musical interpretation and getting a really good performance put together. But I want to make sure that you're not forgetting about some of the other important things that aren't necessarily related to the music but can have a big impact on a performance. So let me demonstrate a couple things to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So have you ever been to a performance where some things like this maybe happened? Or maybe this? Now I know those were a little ridiculous, but you've probably been to performances and seen things like that that are kind of similar to that. And of course, never that dramatic, hopefully, but things like the way that you breathe in before you play, the way that you move while you're playing, how much you make your chair squeak, and page turns especially, are things that can really ruin or change a perfectly beautiful piece of music, and a perfectly nice performance can really be taken away from and distracted from by some of those extra musical features. Now, of course, things like page turns and not squeaking in your chair are pretty easy to fix. Make sure that you have your pages copied nicely so you're never frantically turning pages, and you think about being nice and delicate and musical with your page turns, and don't wiggle around in your chair so much to make it squeak a whole bunch, especially if you have a squeaky chair. Sometimes in a performance, if I have a squeaky chair, I might ask for a different chair because I personally do like to move a lot, and sometimes that can be an issue. So do those things ahead of time. Those are really straightforward to make sure that that goes well. But a couple things that I want to touch on in this video that may not always be so straightforward are movement in general and breathing. Moving while playing is somewhat controversial. There's some people who encourage movement and want you to be expressive with your body. There's some people who say you shouldn't move at all and we should only hear the music. So I think that's one of the things that I'm not going to get into too much in this video, but I just want to touch on the idea of being a little bit conscientious of how you're moving as you're playing. Maybe take a video of yourself practicing a run through of a performance and watch it back and actually just pay attention to how you're moving. Maybe even play it on mute to see how you're moving, to see if what you're doing seems natural and makes sense. Remember that movement can help the audience to understand your expression, but movement does not actually make expression. You want to be sure that you can get the musical and the musical ideas that you want without moving at all. And then if you add a little bit of movement to enhance that or to express that through your body, that's probably okay. But if you feel like you're doing a crescendo just because you're moving your body, then that doesn't actually count as a crescendo. We need to hear the music first, and all the musicality needs to be coming through the instrument, and then maybe just a little bit of motion on top of that is okay as long as it's not too distracting. And again, the best thing to do is record yourself with a video, watch the video, see if it's distracting, listen to just the audio, not watching the video, to see if the music is coming across the way that you want it to sound. And that should get you in a good ballpark. We could nitpick all day things that you should and shouldn't do while you're moving, while you're playing, but I'm not super interested in that. So let's go on to the other thing, which is how you breathe. My high school band director would always say that the music has to start from a blank slate or a blank canvas of actually silence before we started playing. And perhaps she would just say that because we were a bunch of high schoolers who were always talking and obnoxious. But I think it's a really good idea to think about the silence that you're creating music out of, and all of these extra musical things being a part of the actual performance. And I think the most important embodiment of that is the breath. In the example that I played at the beginning from the Brahms Symphony, that was a perfect example where, yes, it started from silence, but then the breath was this really anxious, tense breath before this beautiful, wonderful, lyrical piece of music. And that's a perfect example of where your breathing is really not matching and is becoming something that's distracting from the performance. So the solution to this is to just always have a plan, always have the character of music in mind, and be able to breathe in a few different characters perhaps. We never want the breath to be something that's too planned out or something that you're really trying hard to have like a character in your breath, because that just complicates matters too much. Remember, breathing is just as natural and effortless as you possibly can. But there might be a little bit of a different breath in something like the Brahms versus maybe like the Mendelssohn Scherzo that's a little bit more energetic, a little bit more light. And if you can breathe in character, not just to start the piece, but for every breath within the piece, then it adds to the music rather than taking away from it. No matter what, as wind instruments, we need to breathe. So we can either force a breath and try to make it work wherever we need to breathe, or we can incorporate breathing into an element of the music. I think this is an important point where some people try to teach that you should always have one kind of breath, like a relaxed, like every breath should sound like that. And I think that's a good starting point to get control of your breathing and figure out how to breathe in a relaxed way. But I don't think every single breath in every single piece should be the same. Sometimes you might be taking a quick breath just in between a few things, and you're not going to get a full, huge, relaxed breath. And that's okay, especially if it fits the mood of the music. Sometimes you might have a long lyrical piece, a slow lyrical piece, and you can take a little bit longer breath and even easier and more relaxed. So it all depends on the music. And if you're thinking about making that breath musical to match, then it's going to be so much more interesting than just putting a cookie cutter breath into every single breath mark, no matter what the piece is. I hope that gives you a little bit to think about when you're going for your next performance, and I actually want to include a little bonus tip for you. All of this stuff still applies even if you're just doing video recordings. For honor band auditions, have been doing a lot of video recordings. If you're putting together a multi-track thing, it still applies. And another good thing to be thinking about as you're doing video recordings and live performances too is actually what you're wearing. I actually did a good job demonstrating this with just a nice plain black t-shirt, but the background of the video is really important too. I actually did a lot of thought and some work to get this sort of background that looks nice. Whereas when I was doing the example of the little excerpt of Valerie Coleman's piece in the beginning, that video angle was kind of bad. The background was okay, there wasn't anything crazy distracting, but it just didn't look as good and professional as this kind of setup. So even in videos, be thinking about these extra musical details. And I hope eventually we'll be getting back to in-person performances soon, and you'll be able to think of all these details in real life in front of a live audience as well. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching this. I hope that it has been helpful. I want you to leave a comment with your favorite or least favorite extra musical thing that you've heard at a live performance before, and maybe something that you are hoping to avoid, or maybe something that you're guilty of doing in performances that now you're hopefully a little bit more aware of after watching this video. So thanks for watching. I can't wait to hear all of your comments, and I'll see you in another video.